Dogman-On-Dogman, Lake Tahoe Boulder fight. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I saw two dogmen trying to bash each other's brains in one early dawn morning in the waters of Lake Tahoe. At the time, I thought it was the most realistic hallucination of all time, but after that day, I started to slowly learn more and more about the Dogman. I moved to the Midwest in the years following, and whenever anyone would start to tell me about upright canines they'd heard about, or sometimes even seen, I would tell them that those creatures also live in Northern California. This one guy laughed when I told him that, because he thought I was confusing Bigfoot with dogmen or werewolves. I'm not. I'm talking about two big, hairy old wolf or jackal-headed cryptid men, walking upright and using their hand-like paws to pick up big rocks out of Lake Tahoe to try to smash up the other guy's cranium. This did not seem to be a little squabble over turf. These two man-like canine creatures each wanted the other one obliterated. Permanently. This was a long time ago, when I was a touring professional hobo/survivalist, living off the land, and an occasional handout. I was very much into my own trip in those days, which involved a great deal of extreme partying that I clearly needed to get out of my system. Because of that, I'd find myself waking up in places that I hadn't remembered falling asleep in. On this particular morning, I woke up on the ground between some pine trees, or maybe there were fir trees at the edge of a beach. I don't know what they call them, but the trees they use for Christmas, you know. Further south, they have the palm trees, but up north in Tahoe, they got those Christmas trees. Evergreen, that's the word I'm looking for. Because they don't turn orange in autumn, and they don't go bare in winter. As I was sitting under one of those evergreen trees at the edge of a sandy beach, I recognized where I was, as I used to vacation at Lake Tahoe before I blew my first career and wound up the traveling adventurer that I was. Slowly, as I was starting to remember bits and pieces about how I ended up where I was, there was a terrible crashing sound down by the beach, as though a meteor had landed in the water. It was quickly followed by a horrible bellow that sounded like someone had made Scooby-Doo cry. I always loved dogs and cats, and that sounded like a hurt canine. Getting up and looking down toward the water, I saw a really big, bear-sized, furry brown animal that was not a bear. I really wasn't sure what I was seeing, but its fur coat was an orangey brown in the early morning light. The sun hit it from behind, so that it had a bright halo of fur surrounding it, but its features in the center were largely in silhouetted darkness. This made the eye shine seem even brighter, in spite of the lightning dawn sky. The perfect lighting created a situation where that big animal, whatever it was, seemed otherworldly or magical. It was something you could describe as a werewolf, and yet, this was just not what I had personally imagined a real one would look like. In spite of the very wolf-like and canine head, it seemed so much more humanoid than it seemed like any kind of jackal or hyena or wolf or coyote. I've had an argument about this with another dogman witness, who asked me if it had canine rear legs, and if it had clawed paws or hands. When I said yes it did, then he declared triumphantly that the creature I saw was not humanoid. It was an upright canine, with features resembling those of both wolves and humans, or apes or Sasquatches. I really don't know if I go along with that, because this creature was ripped in a way that no dog could ever possibly be. It had sort of a swimmer's physique more than a bodybuilder, but the muscle definition, especially considering that I was viewing it covered by a layer of fur, was outstanding. This was an upright canine with a 6 or 8 pack on its abdomen. This was a humanoid canine the size of a bear, with almost zero body fat. It was an intimidating living being, that's what it was. And this creature man was looking down at something partially submerged in front of it, that I couldn't make out at first. It, or he, reached down into the water, pulled a big rock out, larger than its own head, and held the stone with both arms high above itself. The creature commenced to begin to slam the boulder down on something in front of it, when that something crashed upward through the water and foam. It pushed the large figure backward, causing him to lose balance and drop the boulder. Whatever had risen up so dramatically had succeeded in taking the bear-sized mystery man-beast down onto the surface. Waves crashed upward and outward as the two big whatever they were seemed to each be trying to utterly demolish the other one. I could mostly only make out waves and foam and water splashing high into the air. I knew something horrible was happening, but I couldn't see clearly enough what that might be through the waves and the chaos. To say that this battle captured my interest was clearly an understatement. I looked around to take better stock of my location. I was up about 15 or 20 feet above the beach, hidden behind some boulders and evergreen trees, looking out at the two creatures trying to drown each other. I wanted to get closer to the action, but it would be risky, and I wouldn't have much cover. I felt as though this was probably a safe spot to watch the action from, or at least as safe as any other spot. So I decided to make myself comfortable and try to get the best view that I could manage of whatever those two big wet hairy brownish things were. So if you're trying to follow along at home, I was right around Rubicon Point, which is on the southwestern edge of the lake, on the California side of it. There's a famous old out-of-use lighthouse over there, and I saw it off to the distance on my right. That's how I came to understand where I was that morning. I saw the Rubicon Point lighthouse. There are a lot of big rocks lying around all over that area, and apparently a lot of them are underwater too, as I saw the big muscular guy heaving stone after stone at whatever it was he was trying to squash out of existence. It took some time of patient watching before I finally got a decent view of what was fighting the muscular, hairy, dog-headed man. And I swear to you that it was another hairy, muscular, dog-headed man. This one's fur was maybe a bit darker. I guess he used a little more Grecian formula in his hair, but they were very similar in shape and size. I would say this one had a longer snout and taller ears. So they were different breeds, but the same species, like a Rottweiler battling a Doberman. Not to say that they resembled either of those species. I don't think these animals descended from any domestic dog breeds, but it's not like that's my field of expertise, so I wouldn't know for sure. They look to me to be wild animals, descended from other wild animals. It's just that I never saw anything that looked like them before, so I can't guess as to their family lineage. I've been comparing them to bears when they stand up, since bears do that a lot, especially when they're in a river or lake. These more canine-looking, more muscular kinds of bears or canines or whatever they were, never fully seem to go down on all fours. I'm not saying that they couldn't, but they seem to behave physically more like human beings battling to the death inside of monster bodies than like bears or even ordinary canines. When they were on all fours, it usually meant they had lost their balance and they were about to rise up again. Granted, their way of standing was somewhat structurally different, but their movements were like a much smoother and more effortless version of human movement. And they were able to throw stones so large that I wouldn't have been able to do anything with them but sit on them. So there's more to this, but I want to say that I don't think it's impossible that these might actually be a different kind of a bear. Of course, classifying life on Earth can be a bizarre and tricky thing. For instance, they say whales in the water evolved from wolves up here on land. And so I ask you, if a wolf can grow a blowhole and inspire a Moby Dick, why can't a bear species grow up to be the Dogman? I mean, bears are built to get fat, which is why they do. When they get sick and lose weight, their heads look an awful lot like canine ones. So what if a different kind of bear subspecies came to the fore that was built not for hibernating through the winter, but for hunting and scavenging year-round. Might it not look an awful lot like a super muscular, ultra-ripped dogman? A very healthy, very athletic adult bear, if removed of most of his body fat, would closely resemble the figure at the center of a number of dogman sightings in my opinion. I'm definitely not saying that this is the answer to dogman, but I sort of wonder why it isn't included more often as at least being one possibility. A fast-moving, thin, built-for-speed bear wouldn't look too different from a fast-moving, thin, built-for-speed dog, now would it? Sorry to get a little sidetracked, but that's sort of my pet theory, even though I didn't invent it or anything. And an argument against this is that those hind legs on the dogman are longer, or at least appear to me to be longer, than those on your average adult bear, so it's still just an idea. The two beastmen were still going at it, and both still trying not just to win, but to obliterate the other one off the face of the earth. This wasn't some kind of status demonstration. This was each of them trying to terminate the other one's storyline. When one would score a hit with a rock, it would back the other one off, and so I found myself watching them heaving stones further and further, while the other one ran to get out of the way. The waves and foam got so high that it would become hard to see where the creatures were inside of all of that. I was getting exhausted watching them, but the two manimals just kept on going. When the long toss didn't work, they brought the fighting in close once again for some biting, some scratching, some clawing, and a whole lot of white foam being kicked way up into the air. I saw one of them try to claw the other one's eyes out. I saw the other slam his opponent's head between two rocks, neither of which I would have been able to pick up using both my hands. Each time one of them would score what looked to me like a knockout blow, the other would react as though he had only experienced a mild ouchie. It was the opposite of TV wrestling. These two guys were underplaying each thing they did, but they were still putting on the greatest show on earth. I wondered if I was the only one seeing any of this. I was once an important guy in Tahoe, and there I was, homeless, but still getting the special Tahoe treatment. You know, you won't care, but that morning really was a turning point for me in my life. I never slept on a beach after passing out ever again after that. I started to choose a new life for myself, and I know that in some weird way, it was because of this utterly bizarre morning. So the two of them seemed to be holding their own for some while, but then eventually, the shorter snouted of the two began to take the worst parts of the beating. He sounded more pained each time he would bellow after each successive assault, and he seemed to be striking back with less and less frequency. When the longer snouted beastman grabbed the other and held him down where he couldn't breathe, I honestly thought the fight was over, and that I was going to see one of them terminate the other. Somehow, though, that shorter snouted dogman did something under the water that caused his attacker to scream in a surprisingly high-pitched manner, and he released his captive, allowing him to thunder and crash toward the shoreline. As the two behemoths ran onto the sandy beach, they looked to me even larger than they had in the water. I got up and prepared myself to run, as they were starting to draw a little too close to me for my taste. The longer snouted one picked up a smaller sized stone, like maybe a baseball sized one, and he clocked that werewolf in front of him in the back of the cranium so hard that I could hear the sound from all the way over where I was. The front running beast reacted in pain, clutching the back of his head, then swirled in fury, flinging handfuls of wet sand up into the eyes of the dogman trying to finish him off. Having successfully blinded the longer snouted monster man, the other one leaped on him, viciously attacking and biting. Wet fur was all over the beach, stained in red, as the attack only worsened and got more severe by the second. I wished I had a camera or something on me, but this was in the days before cell phones, and I don't remember if I could have afforded one anyway. The fight looked like it was about to reach a pretty ugly finale, when from somewhere on the left that I couldn't see, 3 guys in uniforms ran toward the monsters on the beach, shouting and waving their arms over their heads. It looked to me like they were armed, but they didn't need to fire, as the 2 dogmen took off in different directions into the water and off the beach. The men disappeared and returned with rakes and things, cleaning it up before the paying customers got up that morning. I wondered if they were just an extremely highly efficient team, or if they had prior experience with this sort of thing happening over there. I had never heard of any cryptids or lake monsters or anything while I had lived at Tahoe earlier on, but then again, I wasn't exactly asking around about monsters in those days either. In all the years since that event, I go back and forth about the idea that it might not have actually happened, that I might have hallucinated it because of dehydration or something. But then I remember how it ended. One of those guys in those uniforms came over and told me I was trespassing and that I had to leave. He seemed sort of apologetic about it, but I wasn't going to squabble anyway. I remember seeing the other guys messing with the beach as this guy walked me away toward the street. I know the second thing happened, so it seems to me that the first thing must have happened also. I try to doubt that it really happened, but I know deep down that what I saw was what I saw. That's why when people tell me of their Midwestern Dogman sightings, I reply with my Northern Californian one. If I weren't confident that it was for real, then I wouldn't be so eager to let everyone know what I lived through. I would sit there silently, wondering if I should tell my story or not. But that's not what I do. And the only way I would react that way, without even thinking it through first, is if I knew for a fact, deep down, that it was all for real. And that's why I'll tell you that no matter how hungover I might have been that morning, I do know what I saw. And what I saw was the Dogman-On-Dogman Lake Tahoe Boulder fight. Hey, I want to let you guys who are club members or channel members know that we have a brand new creepy secret story out about a son and a father who found what the son says is a former werewolf, a deceased one. He claims to have found it in the parking lot of a Walmart in Michigan, and he sent what he says is a photo. There's no information attached to the image to indicate where it was shot and when, or if it's been edited, so I'm only presenting this for entertainment purposes. He admits he took the info off the image, and he attempts to explain and justify that decision in the episode. Members can check it out either via the secret members-only announcement on the community page, or through the email that you should have received with the link in it. If you can't afford to join, don't feel bad. I mean, it probably is a Photoshop job or something like that anyway, so don't get upset. The only reason we get to bring you guys different kinds of Dogman and cryptid experiences all the time is because of some truly wonderful people. And one of the nicest of all is, of course, the great CS, who has once again sent us a grant to help us keep our wheels greased and our bellies full in order to keep the episodes coming out as frequently as possible. We all need to say thank you to CS, because she literally has kept us moving forward on days when I was feeling so low that I was about to give up and try something else. And so for CS, I've written this little rhyme. She is the straw that stirs the drink with messages sent to get me to think. Noble and grand like a keynote address, so is our kind EP we call CS. If you'd like to save us from the fire and be a hero like CS, then just listen to what our international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman has to say. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.